Hi, I've been putting quite a bit of time lately into trying to photograph roe deer and muntjac, and we've got a lot of both species on this estate, and it's a similar approach for both of them. Well, in fact, I'm taking two different approaches. One day I'll just come out like this and I'll just walk about with the tripod and the lens over my shoulder, just hoping to come across them. And then the next time I just have a go at sitting somewhere. And this is a good spot to sit. This is an open meadow in the middle of a woodland. But I don't sit in the open. I go and sit on the edge of the opening amongst the trees over there and just hope the deer come out into the middle here. And it's the same when I'm walking about. Actually, I normally wouldn't walk in the middle of this meadow. I would be on the edge where the deer are not going to notice me so much. The reason I'm in the middle is just in front of me I've got some mineral blocks down. This is it, a mineral lick. Now you can buy these from pet food shops. They're really sold for horses, and horses like to lick them and it's good for them. And it's the same with deer. I have seen them lick them in the past, but a long time ago. So I've put two out in the middle of this meadow, and so far I haven't seen a deer go and start to lick it. And it's getting smaller, there's no doubt about that. That's the rain, and we've had an awful lot of rain. It's slowly disappearing. When I'm doing the walking around bit, I'm using my thermal imager. This is a Pixra, I forgot the model number now, ARC series. Anyway, it's got a much wider angled lens than the previous one I was using, but most importantly, it's so small and lightweight, it fits in my pocket easy. I don't know, I've got it with me half the time, it's so lightweight. But it's very good, and it does pick out the deer. The trouble is it picks out all sorts of highlights as well, so there's lots of things there that are glowing red. But with a little bit of practice, you start to pick out the shapes you're looking for and the size. You're guessing at the size, but you become better at it with time. And I found several deer this morning just as I've been walking around with this, which I wouldn't have been able to see without it.
I think this one is obvious, you can't really miss it. It's the head and the body, the shape of a deer, and about the right size. All these red dots and small white dots, these are grey squirrels, a lot of them. This wood was overrun with squirrels. There's one up in the top branch there, that's a squirrel, and down on the bottom left, but it's the one in the middle I'm interested in. Again, I watch it and I think that is about the shape and size of a deer. So this is the same woodland scene now, but taken with a handheld camera, trying to zoom in. And there is that deer, and there's no way would I have seen that with my naked eye. I needed that thermal imager. Now this deer is not in a good place for photography. It's in the middle of the day, and the deer tend to lie up in the woodland. So I've got the full body shot here, but it's a messy background, not really suitable for photography. If you want to photograph deer, it's usually in the early morning, late evenings they come out into the open to start feeding. Now this roe deer, I'm just walking about. I've come across it, I'm still in the hedgerow. It knows I'm here, you can see it looking at me. But it wasn't too nervous, and I was getting footage. But it keeps checking me out, sniffing the air. But the wind is blowing in the right direction, it's coming from the deer to me, so it's not really working, it can't pick up my scent. Muntjac are actually quite confident when they're in thick vegetation. You can sometimes get very close to muntjac. And this is also taken as I'm just walking around the woods.
So on those occasions when I'm going to sit down and wait to see what comes out in front of me, I come to the edge of the wood amongst the trees. I've got one extra accessory with me, which is my stool, and I'm just going to sit there amongst the trees. Now, the first thing you need to think about with deer is the wind direction. Where is it blowing from? And today it's obvious. I can feel it on my face. The wind is coming this way, taking my scent down the edge of the wood, and I'm hoping the deer are going to come out on the other side of the meadow, so I'm okay. I mean, ideally I want the wind blowing this way, taking my scent that away, but that will do, that's okay. But there's many occasions when you're actually not sure which way the wind is blowing. It doesn't feel as if there's any wind. Now, your face is actually very sensitive to the wind, so normally by just turning your head around you can feel which way it's blowing. But the next thing you do is you just wet your finger. Tastes a bit salty from picking up that block. But anyway, once you've got a wet finger, you can tend to feel the wind better. But there's some days when even then you can't feel it. I guess it'd be the only advantage to being a smoker. If you're a smoker, you're always going to know which way the wind is blowing. But I've never smoked. So when it's like that, well, it just doesn't matter. You just got to sit and hope. Now, there's a number of tracks coming across the grass, across the meadow, and what walks along those tracks? Well, everything. Once there's a track going across a meadow, then everything will follow that track. So you can't look at it and say that's a deer track or a fox track. Everything will use the same track. We do. When I walk across this meadow, normally I walk along where there's a track. Even though the grass is not very long, there's less resistance to walk along the track. So badgers I always think of as the main trap maker. They've got low bodies, broad feet, they're heavy. If they make a track coming across here, after that, fox, deer, rabbits, hares, we're all going to follow that track. But I have situated myself where I'm actually covering two of the tracks coming across this meadow, one to my left and one to my right. And now I just have to sit and wait and keep warm.
No roe deer has ever showed up in this meadow while I've been there in recent weeks, but the muntjac is quite frequent. They are a very strange looking creature. It's the way they walk and the way they run. They have a very strange gait. But at this point, this muntjac is, shall I go or shall I stay? Doesn't seem to be able to make up its mind. It's not a British deer, of course. They've been introduced from Asia. Now, this shot by the water I actually took some years ago, but I thought I'd show it because it's one of my favourite clips of Muntjac, a mother and its youngster trying to suckle.
So what we have here is a ride going through the forest, and during the summer they've been cutting the grass through the middle chunk of it. On the outsides of that ride you've got longer vegetation and then the trees again. And I've seen roe deer feeding out on this ride here several times, and where I'm going to sit is absolutely ideal. The sun is setting over there. If I sit against that hedgerow, it's just inky blackness. You can't see anything. If there was a person standing there now with me looking into the sun, I wouldn't be able to see them. So the roe deer has no chance of seeing me, and the wind is blowing the right way. It's taking my scent behind me. So everything's good. So I'm just going to go and sit in this hedgerow and hope the roe deer comes out in front of me here. Well, I'm not going to need the binoculars again, so I'll put those away. But what I will do is I'm going to get out the bag, the 2x and the 1.4 extender. And why? I'm using the 300 f4 OM lens today. Haven't used it for a while. When I bought the 150 to 400, I didn't anticipate ever using it again, but I've kept it because it's a wonderful lens and it's a backup. I've always got it. One day I'm going to need it as a backup. That means I've got to keep putting extenders on and off. That's the beauty of a zoom lens. It's like driving a car with 6 gears. This is like a car with 1 gear. It's very frustrating. You've just got that one image size. So you keep putting on extenders. And when I'm shooting video, I do put the digital multiplier on as well. The only thing I can say is I used to be very quick at putting extenders on and off, because when I was using this lens as my main lens, it was something I was doing an awful lot. So you become very adept at it. That's on. I just got to get the 2x and get it ready. If I put the 2x extender onto the 150 to 400mm lens, it's not sharp. It's really not acceptable, so I don't. I can put the 1.4 extender onto the 150 to 400, and that's okay. It's not as good as taking pictures without the extender, but it's good enough. But with the 300 f4, I can put the 2x on, and it's optically fine. It's not as good as shooting without an extender, but it's more than acceptable. The 1.4 soaks up 1 stop of light, and the 2x soaks up 2 stops of light. But it's the optics you're really worried about. If I was sitting out there in the sunshine, I'd be a lot warmer. The sun's going low now, it's going down towards the horizon, the temperature's dropping, and I wish those sun's rays were hitting my coat, but they're not. I'm going to put the hood up a bit.
I'm not the only person interested in the roe deer. There's lots of deer stalkers' seats on this estate.
There's a deer. It's a male, a buck, and it's just coming out onto the left-hand side of the ride. I shall have to stop talking now.
Everything's right, the wind's blowing in the right direction, the sun is lighting the deer up. And of course I've got a silent camera, don't have to worry about shutter noise anymore. I want different image sizes, whether I'm doing stills photography or video. And ideally I want the deer to do something, rather than just eat. And certainly when it comes to stills pictures, it's no good taking a shot when its head's down like this. You've got to wait for its head to come up, which it does frequently because it's checking for danger. So I had the 1.4 on, then I'd take it off, then I'd put the 2x on. Lots of different image sizes. Now you might think that the clicking noise of the metal against metal would disturb the deer, but it's not as loud as it sounds. It's because the lapel mic that I'm using to talk to camera is very close to the camera body. Now this I regret. As I'm watching this deer, I felt it was going to do something. You'll watch its rear foot in a minute. It comes up. And then I thought, what's it going to do now? See that posture? And suddenly it took off.
Oh, wow. What was that all about? Why did that buck just do that? I don't know. But I was a bit concerned at one point because he can't see me because I'm in this deep shadow. He was actually going to run into me. He came close enough. I know what I'm going to regret. I was shooting video. It was quite large in the frame, I think. I wish I'd have been doing stills photography at that point.
And I wish I'd had a zoom, because I would have zoomed back. I'd have put the deer much smaller in the frame. And the advantage of stills photography is the autofocus is much better in stills mode. And it would have kept this deer in focus when it came towards me. So I've slowed it down here. This is slowed down in Topaz Video AI, which does a remarkably good job. And this is 8x slow. But I think the autofocus would have kept up with it if I'd have been doing stills. Great pity. Thanks for watching.